I wish this was a beer. Hey, what's up, everybody? What is happening? All right, so welcome to the live show. If you're watching this, your Saturday did not quite go exactly as planned, but you made it here, so you're in good company. So I wanted to bring you guys up to speed a little bit. I'll let some of y'all go ahead and pop in. I'm gonna do something a little bit different in this show. Typically, I go almost immediately into the monologue. But I think this time I'm going to let a few folks come in. I'll say what's up, and then I'll kind of start diving into it. So, and make sure I've got all the refreshments on board. It's water. Don't get too excited. God, I got to lose some weight. All right. So anyway, here's the deal. Y'all can check it and say, what up, B? What up, man? How you doing? So here's the thing. Like the title says, the Tri-5R2 Chronicles. So, Ferocious 1980 say, no love for the G2s. I'm going to get into that in just a minute. Let's go ahead and jump into the middle of it. Actually, I like the tires. But here's a couple of problems that I've got with them. So if you haven't seen the videos that I've done that were and I get it, they're kind of staccato sent out into the world, but I've got one with some dig hits. I've got one with some roll hits. I've got some wet weather, and unfortunately, I don't have any quarter-mile hits. But we've got some data on that. So last night, decided to take the car to the drag strip. Now, I did a couple of things a little bit differently. First, I ran it in total street trim. I didn't put the skinnies on it. I didn't take any kind of weight out of the car whatsoever. So we're talking speaker boxes in the car, package tray thing in the back is in the car. I even threw my floor mats into the back of the car just to try to get as much weight into the car as I possibly could. So on top of that, was running a little bit fat on fuel. Everything I could do to try to at least get some semblance of an edge to the tire, because I really, to be honest with you, didn't have a whole lot of confidence. And it really would kind of stand to reason, but really reasoning would be based on somewhat not really the most accurate data, at least given what the task was going to be. Okay, drag strip and street are two completely different things. Pressures were not even close to the same. You get the idea. So let me give you a breakdown of how the tires did. Now, unfortunately, as is typical in this type of situation, I don't have video of this, at least no real quality video. Just my luck. So okay, mosquitoes again, really? Got him. Send him to hell right where he came from. Body count so far for the show, 1 already. 3 minutes and 11 seconds into it. We've already got one. Anyway, sorry, I digress. So let me give you guys a breakdown. That's the way the car was set up. It's got the latest. I didn't throw anything at the car in terms of tune, didn't numb it up or anything like that, just left the tune alone. And really what I was doing is just trying to get some data logs on the car. I needed some wide open throttle data logs with at least 135, 137 miles an hour. I need to be able to at least run the car out the back door, gather data, find out what short-term knock looked like, find out what, basically, what's my injector duty cycle in these conditions, everything. Just gathering up some data in a way that basically doesn't put me at risk of going to jail. So anyway, drag strip's a great place for that. But because of the back order on the Mickey Thompson ET Street R's in the size of 305 4517, which, by the way, if you need a set, good luck, because you're going to be sitting around at least until the end of October, and according to Mickey Thompson, you might be into December at this stage of the game, at least as of on or around the tail, let's say October 1st. This is the 28th of September. Anyway, if you haven't ordered them, you better get on them quick. So the pass basically went like this. Did a big smoky burnout, staged the car, had my camera and everything mounted up, had everything going, and I rolled into the throttle kind of softly. Running up against a guy that I know. He's got a black red eye, running on a drag pack. 309 car, real pretty. So I baby the car out of the hole, but creepy enough, the car dead hooked. And it wasn't like I was just, when I say baby, you got to remember, it's instead of just light switching it or coming into it, waiting for the everything to kind of load up and then light switching it. Basically, I just kind of on the throttle, and I really wish I would have showered down on it. The car hooked, and it went a 1060 something, 1065, because I can't remember what the number was, but like a mid 1060 at like 127 miles an hour. Reeling in the freaking red eye, which, you know, it's a stock red eye, tuned Revlon. When she hikes up her skirt, she's on a hunt. But the car is quicker than a red eye, and it's reeling it in, but he got me. That red eye busted out with a freaking 150, 160 foot, and I gotta tell you, even if I had a set of the normal tires that I run, I would have barely eked them out on the big end, given the difference in reaction time, because again, I was pretty slow coming out of the hole. Long story short, red eye got the victory. I got the better looking time slip though out of the deal. I was actually pretty jazzed about that. But one good day, one pretty day didn't make a spring. Hold on. And because of that, I knew that there was a little bit of room to wiggle, but not by a whole lot. See, I was walking up against a pretty decent set of advantages here. Number one, at least for the tires, what I'm getting at. Number one, track prep was really good. It was early on in the night. And so that was the biggest you could ask for. The biggest advantage you could ask for was the better conditions. So that's the only one you need. As the night progressed, things changed though. The second pass, I was a little hot going in. At this point, now I'm starting to have issues. Oh, the camera, the mount comes off the windshield, comes flying right past my head. So all of that videotape ended up in the back of the car. Basically, I videoed my rear seat delete all the way down the drag strip. The next pass, I actually came into the burnout box at about 203 degrees. Didn't get a whole lot of cool down time, and in the process of trying to get my car, this is so like my luck. Anyway, in the process of trying to get a second data log with the car hot, and what I wanted to do is I wanted to get basically the worst case scenario. I wanted to get the thing to where it would be in the worst possible case scenario for 93 octane, highest engine temperature, the whole bit. That pass wasn't really all that great. I should have launched it harder and I didn't, but it went a 1.6 flat 60 foot. No, I'm sorry, a 1.69 60 foot, and went a 10. I think it was a 10.70 is what it ran. But a lot of that had to do with the fact that the car was steaming hot when I made the pass. But again, soft launching it, or at least a little bit softer. But it did dead hook, and that's the weird thing. Air pressure on the tires was 22. I gotta tell you, couldn't really complain about it at that point. But I knew that the time was gonna come where the track was gonna start going away. To give you guys an idea what the conditions were, we were playing around with about 2,000 foot DAs all night. And the issue here wasn't necessarily a 2,000 foot DA, it was the humidity. Guys, it was running around 90% humidity by the end of the night, and it was hovering in the 85% humidity leading up to that. It steadily got worse. And so, as you guys know, humidity is one of the killers for horsepower. And, well, we had about 85 to 90% of that. So, yeah, to say that the conditions were not exactly ideal is a bit of an understatement. But I got to tell you, I wasn't all that disappointed. At least I wasn't as disappointed as I thought I was going to be. In fact, I was pleasantly surprised. But I will tell you, the last pass of the night, it's only got 3 passes, and the last pass of the night, I decided I was going to go for broke, try to roll into the thing fairly hard, and it made about 1 revolution and broke loose. And you can see in the data log, in fact, if you look at the TPS chart, you can see me pedaling it, just trying to get it to hook. Never did, went ahead and just went watt with it, rolled through it, and lost way too much time trying to pedal the car. It was basically a bust of a run. But the track had pretty much gone away at that point. When you get that kind of humidity, the track starts to gather up moisture. All bets are off when it comes to traction, and you're going to run into those types of problems. And I should have known better. This, shame on me. I actually should not have run the car at that last pass. Tried to get a little bit greedy on the launch, and it didn't pan out. So, what is the general consensus again on the tires? Well, first and foremost, again, not very easy to look at, a little bit too wide. But man, when it comes to performance, these things don't suck at all. In fact, if you've got a Charger and you're running 11-inch wide wheels, I say this is the tire to go for you. If you're running 10.5s, I'm still not there. I think that it's a great tire. I think that, again, that the wet performance dictates, as well as just the normal handling of the tire, would dictate that this is really the tire to get, especially if you're going to run this as more or less a high traction daily tire. In other words, in lieu of a summer tire, this would be the one that you would want to go with. If you want to play around a little bit on the street, they're fine. If you want to take it to the drag strip, again, they're fine, provided that your track prep is on point. And if you're a naturally aspirated guy, you've got an even bigger advantage over the Hellcats in this, because this is one of those situations where having a little bit less power, well, I mean, it's not a little bit less power, but you know what I'm saying. Having a car with less power is actually going to end up being more fun, and you can take advantage of these tires much better than I can. But that being said, I can roll into the throttle with these tires fairly hard, and they don't just go up in smoke. I mean, they're not like a set of Aturos or something like that. I mean, they do hook, and you can still play with it a little bit on the street, or a little bit more than you could with normal tires. But again, that's really beside the point. Really not. We kind of beat that horse to death. This is about the drag strip, and again, I say go for it. If you've got a Charger, these are going to be the tires for you. I still think the Tri-5R, the old Tri-5R, is a little bit better in terms of street traction, and but it gives up the ability to perform well in wet conditions. And to that point, this thing was out in the wet again, and I mean, no difference in performance with these tires, obviously. I mean, you wouldn't expect there to be any, but the thing is that I don't think of these tires when they are exposed to a wet condition. I just think of these tires as a normal street tire. So, again, to chronicle my experience with these tires, what would be my biggest takeaway? Well, my biggest takeaway would probably be the fact that it's a good tire, and it's probably the best tire I may never buy again. Because to me, there's got to be some semblance of aesthetic. And I'm running 10.5-inch wide wheels. They just don't really fit the rim right. And that's my only beef with them. But aside from that, I don't know. And the messed up thing about it is that there's no other manufacturer that's making a tire that's really comparable to this thing. A tire that's going to stick really well in these sizes, that does well in the wet. That's a tough tire to come by. And I don't know, maybe I'll just have to learn to love it. We'll see. But let me check in with all of you guys real quick. Got Biagas RDN saying, what's up? First saying, no love for the G2s. We're getting there. I think this is kind of an arranged marriage. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to get rid of these tires. I mean, I bought them. They're on the car. They're performing great. Like insanely good performance for what they are. I don't know. Again, it just feels a little bit forced at this stage. But I'm not going to say no love. But I'm not going to say I love them, but I really like them. Boondogg is saying, what up, B? Got the arm flex. I like it. Ivan Drago saying, if the Nittos die, they die. Exactly. Tell you what, I did a nasty, pretty burnout with them too last night. Juan Fernandez saying, what up, B? What up, Juan? Ferocious checking in saying, send a like, everybody. It's free. Yeah. Like, yes, for sure. Like a whole lot. Oh, Shawnee, appreciate saying prop rod on the 5.8, not giving up on it. Nope. Leaving that prop rod right where it is, brother. Thanks for the contribution. What he's talking about is that prop rod right there holding up the hood. A lot of guys will go in and they'll put the strong arms, you know, the gas shock things on there, but no way. I'm leaving this bad boy old school. Me and that prop rod have got a history. But thanks, buddy. Anthony G saying, what up, B? What up, Anthony? E.T. Ray saying, hey, Mr. Mason, what's up, E.T.? Brent's checking in saying, what's up, guys? What's up, Brent? Shawnee saying, weather is starting to turn. 39 degrees from now. Oh, 0 DA is in my near future. Shooting for that looking for that 9-second time slip. Everybody wish Shawnee some good luck. Hopefully get some good track prep. And, oh, yeah, that car will certainly go 9s. No doubt about that. Jeffrey Bennett say, what up, B? How's it going down there in Texas? Man, it is going well. You know, we're starting to get a little bit of cool weather. It's kind of chilling out a little bit, which is great. Man, you know, couldn't ask for anything better. We're coming into fall, which is one of the prettiest times of year down here. So certainly looking forward to, you know, boost weather, although I'm just a little bit tweaked that the production... Let's see if we make the body count too. Hang on just a second. Ah, dang it. Saw me coming. Yeah, the production date on those tires is going to sting me a little bit, but it just might mean that those tires are a little bit fresher from when we really get into the deep DAs. Hammy had checking in and say, what's up, Mr. Mason? What's up, Hammy? And again, Sean, thank you very much. I appreciate that, brother. Smoking up 5 checking in and saying, howdy, Mr. Mason. Dropping knowledge. I like it. Got the arm flex. Boom. Dollar Power saying, thanks to you, I'm getting I'm getting reviews on minivans and the algorithms. Who knew? Man, that is hysterical. The new algorithms are funny. So if you search or if you watch one thing, it'll flood your feed with suggested videos. And yeah, that's been happening to me too. And I posted it, and what's funny is that I'm getting, you know, Honda Odyssey and all this other stuff. Oh, and the other thing is the algorithms will find other, like, it'll link your interest or you watching that video to other things. Like, so, okay, what do people with minivans typically do? Well, they go to the grocery store, they go to baby stores, they go, you know, there's all this other stuff. So I'm getting advertisements for all kinds of crap that I would never buy. But anyway, you're welcome. Let me saying, I heard the Tri-5R2 is going to replace the Tri-5R. That is correct. In fact, it may have already replaced the Tri-5 on the non-drag radial side, which is a bummer because, man, the Tri-5 has been such a great tire for so long. It's a bit of a drag, but you know, it's the bigger drag of it is just, I'm so used to the car being right here and not having Foxy here, but the biggest drag of it is that the 305 fits a 10.5-inch wheel so well, at least in the Tri-5 and in the Mickey Thompson ET Street SS. Aha, something to think about there. So, because of that, and believe me, I'm not a huge aesthetic queen, although there is a pretty big aesthetic change with the car coming soon. I'm not so much of a princess when it comes to that, but what I will tell you is there are some things that just from a functionability standpoint don't make any sense. And this is one of those areas. In fact, what stings the most is that the 315/35 size tire is exactly the same height as the stock tire. That's just the way that it works out. The problem is that tire can't really fit on a 10.5-inch wide rim, and the Challenger is challenged in this respect because the fender well just is not that deep. You got to go in there and do some pretty significant massaging to get that tire to fit. So the messed up thing about this is that the G2, if you want to call it that, because 555 R2, yeah, R2, they could have just called it the G2 drag radial. The problem is that it's a little bit wider than it should be, but it's not as wide as a 315. And it's a little bit taller, I think, from what I can tell, than it should be, but it's not as tall. So it's just this funky size tire. And the other part about it is that even on the 11-inch wide wheel, this thing is going to fit flush, which would make it look great, but it kills the 10.5-inch wide crowd. So, you know, you almost get the sense that, you know, it's a tweener, as opposed to like the ET Street SS looks great on a 10.5-inch wide tire. The Nitto Tri-5, the old school Tri-5R, looks perfect on the back of those rims, or on those rims on the back of the car. I don't know. This is just what we got to work with now. So anyway, Ernesto checking in, saying, I wanted to get the 305 4022 Nitto Tri-5 R2s for the Rams so I won't have to switch from stocks to the drag pack. Not sure now. Well, here's the thing, man. You might be in pretty good shape, but I'll tell you this. You're going to want to stick with the drag pack because you can take advantage of the gearing advantage that you'll get with the shorter tires. So I think that, I mean, if you're just going down to the drag strip to play, it might work well in that scenario. But really, I would keep those tires for the street. And I know the drag pack's a bit of a pain in the ass. Believe me, brother, we're rowing the same boat on this. But I would go ahead and stick with that, and that'll get you the best times for sure. Plus, it makes it a lot easier just to run the thing at the drag strip. Let's see. Shawnee's asking, your thoughts on 315 Mickey Thompson on Hellcats versus 305s, gear ratio loss versus traction. If we're talking about the ET Street SS, you're not going to get much of a difference in terms of traction on that. It's just a simple fact of the matter. So here's the thing. On a 10.5, we're talking about a 10.5-inch wide wheel here. The ideal scenario is that you have a tire that has a straight line. Like if this is the rim, or really this is the bead, the bottom of my hand is the bead. You want the bead of that tire to rest on the rim and to not go out too far past the rim, and you want your tread to be right at the bottom. So you don't want any bowing, you don't want it to be tucked in, you want it all straight and flush. What that'll do is that'll give you the best weight transfer from the wheel to the ground. That is especially needed when we're talking about an independent rear suspension that doesn't compress flat, it compresses progressively on an angle. So what happens is that change, if you have, like if this is the rim, this hand here is the rim, this hand here is the tire. If that tire bulges out and then the suspension compresses, you can see that now your contact patch literally changes shape and it gets smaller as the tire compresses. If it's flat and it compresses, it'll stay roughly the same, and you're putting roughly the same pressure down onto the ground. In other words, you don't want any pressure going out. You only want it going straight down. So in terms of actual traction, there's not going to be much of a difference. Plus, you got to consider the fact that you can go out and pattern test the tires, and when you're playing with pressure, when you get the tire back, look at how it wore. A lot of times on the 315, you'll get both sides where there's absolutely no wear whatsoever. It's because it's not carrying any load, and all that load is going straight down in, it's a line of, let's see if I can get it. It's a line of sight. He ain't dead. Here's the rest of the little bastard. I've got this Pennzoil sign over here, and now it's got body count 2. So, but that's the thing. You'll get those two the two sides of the tires. It's not getting any pressure, direct down pressure, and that's why you don't see any wear on it. So for me, it's just added extra weight. Some guys will argue, yeah, but when the suspension compresses and yada yada. No, if you're running the right pressure and you're running the right size tire, it's absolutely going to hook better. Plus, it's wider. It's lighter than the wider tire. So that'll kind of give you my thoughts on that. Don Power saying, so I got 2 thumbs up from the professor. Absolutely. So I hit the like button. Very good. Himmy Head saying, thank you very much for that. Yeah, like buttons. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, family. I mean, I'd say I've had good experiences with the Nitto Tri-5Rs on the track and daily driving it in Florida, rain and all, so kind of bummed it's going away. Man, I've been using the Tri-5R for forever. I mean, it's been on the back of both of the Lightnings. I've had that tire on everything. I there for a while. I didn't have a car that didn't have Tri-5R, so I just don't get it. I mean, I get it, but I don't get it. It's just such a good-looking tire, and the move to these tires. And I've made my voice known at Nitto too. I mean, yeah, the tire from a performance standpoint. I mean, and I've been trying to chronicle my experience with these tires, mainly because, you know, it's a new tire. A lot of guys are taking a look at it, and a lot of us are, to be honest with you, I mean, we're so faithful to Nitto because the tire from the 555 family anyway wears great, does well in all conditions. You can take it to the drag strip. You know the limitations of the tire, but you also know that it's a good street tire in general. All of that comes into play, right? Well, you know, with this new tire, a lot of folks were really curious about how does it work in all these different situations. And that's why I've tried to show as much as possible how the thing reacts with a car with roughly the power of mine, which is, you know, pretty decent amount of power. But I mean, there's cars that are a lot more powerful than mine. There's cars that are less powerful than mine, but it'll give you kind of a good barometer for how that thing's going to work. And man, it kills me to say this because from a performance standpoint, they actually rate really high. And I'll tell you this, if they just fit better. I mean, the look of it, I know I've lamented the fact they look like an advertisement banner rolling around on this thing, and they're just a little bit busy from a visual standpoint. But from a fitment standpoint, that's really the thing that gets on my nerves a little bit. So, and the other side of it is it doesn't have a rim, you know, like a rim protector or anything like that. I only bring that up, and you wouldn't expect it to. I mean, it's a drag radial. It's not, I don't know, it's a drag radial, so on one hand, I really don't expect it to. But I will say this. I bring that up because when you look at the tire on the rim, and it just kind of it makes that immediate bulge right out, it gives it kind of a funky look, especially on the slingshots. And speaking of that, let's chat about what's next for Revlon, because I mean, guys, look, let's face it, there's not a whole lot left to do to the car for what I'm looking to accomplish with it. As much as I would like to say that, you know, it would make sense to put pulleys on it, do this, that, or whatever else with it, it would kind of take away from the fun that I'm having with the car. I mean, more power isn't always more fun. Perfect example of that is, well, just this past Friday, you know, babying the thing out of the hole, not really being able to get everything out of it, especially on a street setup already, isn't really pointing the finger to more power. Anyway, slingshot rims are going away. Demon replicas are going on the car for a couple of different reasons. First reason is, quite honestly, I am absolutely sick of cleaning slingshots. The other reason is that the slingshots to me on these cars, on the old school body, look a little bit forced. And that's, I get it, it's a subjective thing, it's a matter of taste and all this other stuff, but when I see the slingshots and then I see the 5-star look, the 5-star look just seems to fit the look of the car a little bit more appropriately, in my opinion. But the other thing they do is they're just not as busy. They're a little bit, I don't know, they're a little bit more sedate, and that's what I like about them, but they've got maybe a little bit more of an old school look to them. So anyway, going with the Demon replicas, they're going to be easier to clean. I don't know if they're going to be lighter, heavier. I really don't care. And the other side of that is that they're just going to look better all the way around to me. So that's what's next on the plate. At least for the street setup, she's going to be going with that wheel and tire combination. So, for better, for worse on that deal. So let's see. And I think, honestly, because of they're a chunkier wheel, I think that it might make that tire look a little bit better on it. And the reason why I say that is because you're not going to be so distracted by the tire with that slingshot wheel and a kind of a delicate looking wheel. I just think this is going to be a better look all the way around for the car. Let's see. Smoking Up 5 is saying, what kind of 60 foot should a stock 392 get on a 275 40/20 ET Street SS? I'm launching at 2200 RPM and only getting about 1/8 60 foot times. I feel like it could be better. It depends on your DA, and I mean, it depends a lot on your DA, my friend. 172 is not unheard of. 175 is pretty common. I would say bring your launch RPM down to about 1500 and try that. Roll into the throttle. Try a couple of things. One, if you're on a prepared drag strip at about 1500 RPM, you can light switch the throttle. Just give that a shot a couple of times. Nice burnout, first gear, second gear burnout. Make sure you're out of the water box when you do that, by the way. Don't do your burnout in the water box. Coat the whole inside of the fender well with water. But anyway, give that a shot. Again, mid to low 170s is pretty much the norm, especially this time of year. I've been able to cover high 160s before with that setup with good air, so that'll give you an idea. You got plenty left in it. And in fact, that was the first tire I ever put on Shalandra. And tire pressure. Oh, that's the other thing. Don't go real low with those tire, the pressures on those tires. Stick around 24, 25 as your minimum. That'll give you a nice flat contact patch. Let's see. Oh, Cody's saying torn between 4.7 Durango and a 5.7 Charger. I'd go 5.7 Charger on that one. And I don't know what to pick. Been watching a lot of your Charger the RS lately, and is making me want one. They're fun. Sean saying, I like my 305 4517 on my drag pack, but the slightly taller version is popular, including a few of your buddies. Sorta. So we've got 315 45s in the house on one car. That would be the 285 upper car, and then you've got the 305 45 18 checking in with Chris's car on those 18-inch Bravados. So yeah, I mean, they're fairly popular, but I like the 305 45 17 because I'm trying to cheat that gear ratio just a little bit. Hit me at saying, last chat you mentioned the HP 70 slips around 550. It's actually 550 pound-feet of torque. Ever see issues on a 392 with 85 millimeters? Well, no. Haven't seen too many of them set up like that. But I can tell you that, look at it like this. If you're running street tires, and I mean, you're not taking the car to the drag strip, you're only playing around with it on the street, you may not even run into a problem here. Mainly because your tires are going to act like your fusible link. They will break loose before you get to that torque figure. Until you get into about 4th or 5th gear. In which case, they still hook. But typically at that point, you're into horsepower mode, not really into torque. And you're not really overcoming the kind of inertia. In other words, you're not dragging something from a dead stop up. You're already moving along pretty good. In that case, some of the transmissions have lasted, and this is a lot of Pro-Charge cars. Pro-Charge cars that are making 550, 570 horsepower to the rear wheels and about 530, 550 pound-feet of torque. Now, that being said, to go much further than that, start running the thing on sticky tires, start launching it a lot at the drag strip, that's where the HP 70 is going to start to have problems. We've actually had them slip on the dyno. So, I mean, I would take that number to heart and know that if you plan on going any higher than that, and let's say you're starting fresh, if you plan on going any higher than that, that's when you really need to start taking a look at what you're building, what you're budgeting for your build. And I mean, you know how this song ends. Just go ahead and say it. Start looking at Hellcats, because you're getting into Hellcat power territory. And Hellcat HP 90 is known to be all but bomb proof. At least at these power levels, 600, 700, 800 horsepower to the rear wheels. And there's no need to upgrade. It's already there for you. The other thing is, again, just the cost of getting the thing to that power level. You get, you get it. You understand what I'm getting at. So hopefully that helps to answer that a little bit for you. Yeah, there is going to be some concession there if you're running a stock tire, but just like anything, it's not going to last forever at those power levels if you start launching it hard. Shawnee's saying, I think you like the giant killer aspect of your car at stock boost. Your car is all over a stock red eye. Yeah, no, I mean, I was reeling one in at the track. Here's the thing. Yeah, I like the idea of playing around in the shallow end nowadays, or what people, would maybe call the shallow end, especially if you're up here looking down. Here's the deal, guys. I'm not talking out of turn when I say this either, so I need y'all to understand that this is coming from a place of love, but it's also coming from a place of experience. And I'm not even going to talk about me. I'm just going to talk about what I've seen lately. Guys that have started going nuts with their cars, going double pulleys and fuel systems, and end up dialing those cars up to mid 9-second territory. You're taking the car and you're making it very fast. I mean, there is nobody that can argue that a 9.5-second car on the street is not a fast street car. Or if they try to make the argument, then they're being a freaking douchebag because they're coming from like a 7-second car, right? So whatever with that. Here's the thing. When I say that they're just not fun anymore at that point, it's not me saying that from my experience, like me personally. I know this because every one of the people that I know, save for maybe a small handful, and I mean, we're talking tens of people here. Of those, let's say out of 40 people, of those, 5 or 6 have kept their car. That's it. 5 or 6, after going nuts with modifications, have kept their car for more than a year. And a lot of those guys are folks that campaign the cars, are always at the drag strip, always playing with the car, have got solid tunes, lots of data logs, understand how to read a data log, knowing something's going kind of weird. Car guys, they know what they're doing. They know what to look for. They maintain their cars. It's the guys that are a little bit more casual that just want bragging rights. Those are the guys that end up selling their car as soon as it gets to about that 800 horsepower to the rear wheels area. The problem is that they're not used to it. They don't take the car to the drag strip and experience the car in its proper environment. They're out doing, hooning around with it on the street. And this happens too. And this isn't a question of if it happens, it's a question of when. It's kind of like a deal with motorcycles. It's not a question of when you're going to low side. It's a question of, it's not a question of when you're going to low side. It's like, how soon is it going to be until you low side? Whatever. Yeah. Skywalker Ranch had GSXR 750 just plant itself right on my left ankle, and yay. Anyway, so the scenario I'm getting to is this. Guys will take the car out, might be on drag radials. Typically, it should be on drag radials at this point if you're playing around with it on the street. They'll hammer it at about 40 miles an hour. This is almost, you can almost script it. And they'll mat the throttle at 40 miles an hour, and they're used to driving the car during the summertime. Maybe the weather gets a little bit cool. The car will break loose. Some of the guys will just stay in it, and when it breaks loose, it'll shift. The next gear up, you've got real high dial-up rate because the car is making a ton of torque. Tires go up in smoke. They start doing one of these things. All the nannies kick in, bring the car basically into chill mode because they're probably in sport mode or track mode when they did this. And all of a sudden now they're scared to death of the car. Now they won't admit that they're scared to death of the car. And you'll hear some stories of bravado and, you know, I just decided I wanted to go in a different direction. Bullshit. What happened is you filled your pants full of fecal matter, had to pay somebody some under the table hush money to clean your seat, hide your clothes from your wife or significant other, hit them with the garden hose or just throw them in the trash in general. I mean, that's how this, where is it? Ha ha, body count's now 3. Caught that one dead in the air. Yeah. Anyway, that's basically how that story goes. And it's not, listen, it's not a knock on those guys. It's not. This is an observation. Once the cars get to that point, that's typically when the guys will basically holler calf rope on the whole ordeal, throw the thing up on Craigslist or Marketplace or whatever, and they'll wash their hands of it. And these are the same guys you'll see waiting in line to get one of the new Broncos. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, back in the day, the normal way that it would go would be nice car, ruin a nice car by making it too fast, freak yourself out, ditch that thing and get a Jeep or a Bronco or maybe a K5, but it was typically a Jeep or a Bronco, and that's where you know the dust settled. So the problem is that I've driven much faster cars than mine. I'm used to driving stuff that's a lot faster than that. That car is a lot of fun for me. But I also know that the temptation will be there to make it go faster if I try to make the car go faster. Because I'm not going to be happy. If I start going that route, I'm not going to be happy with running a 940. I'm going to want to run 870s or 890s with the car. And at that point, it's just not fun anymore. The more money you start running, you know, more money, more problems, right? Well, the more money you start sinking into one of these things, and it could be a Hellcat, it could be a Mustang, Camaro, Vet, Viper, it doesn't matter. Mustang, Camaro, didn't ever hot rod a Camaro. Mustang, Vet, modded the hell out of my C5Z06, Viper, I've had 3 of those, one of them was obnoxious. So out of that list, I just kind of Freudianly threw out all the cars that I've modded way too much except for the Camaro. Anyway, squirrel, sorry. But the idea is that you get it past a certain point and it is now, it's gone from being a really fun, fast, enjoyable street car to a really slow race car. What would you rather have? Would you rather have a freaking fast street car or a slow race car? And that's where you're at. And when you get past that mentality, then the other side of, well, durability issues come into play and parts breakage comes into play. You've got to start budgeting so much money for crap that is not sexy. All right, half shafts, not sexy. Drive shaft, not sexy. Diff braces, not sexy. You're spending money on parts just to keep the thing running. You're spending money on parts just to maintain the level of performance that you had. That isn't any fun, but that's what you have to do. And that's the funny thing, by the way, that a lot of these guys will do. Some shops will let them just go ahead and throw the whole thing together, make all this power, and just sit back and wait for that thing to show up on the back of a flatbed with a busted half shaft or a jacked up drive shaft. Pick something, right? Something that is yawn-ensuingly boring to have to talk about, but it's one of the things that makes the car go. I mean, it's kind of one of the parts that makes the car automobile. And, you know, get ready to bust out another 1,000, and you know how that story goes. Anyway, getting off topic here. Hit me head say, basic bolt-ons and tunes. Sorry, the last post got cut off. Yes, I think. for Revlon, if that's what we're talking about. Let's see. Oh, Levi's asking, hey, D, what are some horsepower numbers to the wheels should I see with ported heads and the SRT Max Plus cam? So here's the thing. A lot of those, it depends on what engine you're talking about, because you can do that to a 5.7 as well as a 392. But ported heads, depending on the engine, I mean, if you do a set of ported heads on a 6.1, they will pick up power. On the 6.4, not a whole lot. The trucks, I mean, you need to be running a ported 6.4 truck manifold, and there's a lot of things you're going to need to do. Anyway, getting back to it, most of those cams, depending on the dyno, will be somewhere around 475, 480 to the rear wheels. Typically for the 392s, for the 5.7s, you're going to be like in the 385, 390-ish range. But it just depends on the engine that we're talking about. Oh, there it is right there on the 6.1. So the 6.1, you're going to be in that 485, 495 horsepower range. So yeah, I guess I kind of sideways answered my question. And saying he's trying to get to that 500 mark NA if possible, you'll get close. Just remember though that with a lot of those, you know, any of the SRT Max Cam, any of the cams that start getting more heavier on the intake duration especially, but any of the cams that start getting the 226-ish on the intake range, I can't remember the specs on the SRT Max Cam though. It might be a little bit smaller than that. Anyway, you're going to start to get a little bit lazy down low, so just know that coming into it. But yeah, the 6.1's more traditional with the way that it will respond to modifications. The heads don't flow near what the 6.4 / Hellcat heads flow, or even the later 5.7 heads. I mean, they're just not as good, but they promote velocity, which makes them peppy. They have good throttle response, good power too, but they respond more like a traditional, like a LS or even a, you know, LA, any of the older style V8s. I mean, they're just more traditional in that respect. May I suggest also possibly extrude honing that intake manifold as well. Could pick up a little bit. But you'll get close to it. And depending on the dyno, you may go over. Some of the dyno jets have been a little bit generous, at least from some of the things I've seen lately. Shawnee's saying, are you more excited about racing Revlon in some good air or the 89? Well, to answer that question, I'll just say that I'm more interested in Revlon. The 89 really isn't going to see much track use. I mean, this car, it's a lot of fun on the street. It does need a trans rebuild, but, you know, for just cruising around playing with the car, I mean, that's its forte. And really, I don't want to get into the habit of taking this thing to the drag strip, because making more power with this car is simply out of the question unless I go with a truck-based intake manifold like one of the Edelbrocks. I like the RPM2. Great bit of kit for one of these cars, so that may be on the agenda for this thing at some point. And if I'm saying it may be, it means that I've already been considering it, looking into it, and all of that. Mainly because the GT40 is just not that good of an intake. I mean, the top portion of the runners, basically what would be 1, 3, 5, and 7. Those runners look really pretty. The runner is just a nice, even, no funky stuff with short side radiuses or anything like that. But if you look at, I mean, you can kind of see the bottom one right here. The bottom runners come out. What's funny is that they're terrible. The bottom runners come out, they'll kind of jog over, and if you look at it from the side profile, you'll see the intake runner, and then it just pivots on a 90 going into the car. I mean, it's terrible. So, again, RPM2 would be a much better intake manifold. The old school Holly would be good. Basically, anything would be better. But here's the goofy thing. This intake is really good for throttle response. Power down low. Tip-in throttle response at Sucker was biting me in the side of my bald head. What is that, 4? There's some bits of that sucker. Hell yeah. Get my dead mosquito out of my freaking bald head. So body count, 4 for the night. The thing with the GT40 is this. All of the power is on the left-hand side of the dyno sheet. Any of the other intakes starts to move that power over to the right. And it's not that it's a bad thing, but you'll end up losing 15, 17 foot-pounds of torque down low with that intake versus this intake manifold. And then you pick up maybe 15 or 17 horsepower on the backside, revving it out to like 6,200 RPM, give or take. It just depends on what you want to do with the car. If you want to make more horsepower, actually it could even make more than that, probably make more like 20 horsepower more than this intake manifold. And on the dyno, you're going to see that, and driving it, you're going to feel it and notice it. But again, this car mission statement really isn't for that anymore. It would have been a great setup for a centrifugal supercharger, but it's going to stay NA. Going back to the mechanical fan, maybe throw a set of pulleys on it to offset the fan power loss, but that's really about the most I'm going to do with it. Just get out and have a fun time with it. H337 saying, what is the torque limit on the HP70 when using a high stall converter and sticky tires? I would think it would be a little bit lower. No, it's still basically the same. I mean, you're still playing around in that 530 pound-feet of torque. I mean, you can run pretty much any converter on it. It's not really going to hurt anything. You know, sticky tires, I mean, a bunch like this. The guys with the trucks that, you know, hot rod these things, I mean, they're running around with 4,000 plus RPM stalls. You know, they're launching these things through the moon and on smaller sticky tires, and they're fine. But again, you know, you start to look at that torque number, and really it's the 70 Newton meters, which is 490 pound-feet of torque. Anyway, take 70 and multiply 700, because the 70 is just short for 700. The Newton meter conversion is 3/4 of that number. So take 700, or any number if you're looking to convert it, and multiply it times 0.75. That'll give you, if that's not the exact conversion, that'll at least give you a number to budget, in other words. That'll be about your number. And that seems to hold fairly true. Now, again, it's not to say that, you know, you put a blower on a scat pack and it's immediately going to blow through the transmission. It doesn't work like that. But again, there's a lot of determining factors that go into that. So to answer your question, doesn't really affect it by that much, but you start getting to that power number, and then yeah, in that case it would start to lower the life of that transmission pretty quickly. But coming up on it, no, not really. Kevin Collins saying, hey Mason, would you agree that an LT1 with a 24x torque, hang on. The 24x torque head kit is more than capable of making 350 horsepower to the crank and wheels. LT1, yeah, of course. That power is enough for me, and don't think it's don't need an LS for that. Oh, you're talking about the old, yeah, I'm sorry, the older LT1. I actually had one of those in my 96 vet. Yeah, no, listen, man, I would not go slapping the old LT1 around. I wouldn't swap out an LT1 for an LS. The LT1 makes plenty of power. You can play around with cams. LT1 heads are, they're decent enough. From an old school perspective, it makes really good power. They're torquey. They're just a lot of fun to play with, man. OptiSpark, just, watch some YouTube videos on how to swap one of those things out. Make sure you got one on standby. The later ones, if I remember correctly, had provisions for moisture where the earlier ones didn't. So, there's that. But, man, look, we're talking about the early LT1s. I like mine a lot. In fact, I kind of wish I wouldn't have sold that vet, because I was going to re-gear it and just have a ball with it. But, yeah, I'd just go with that, man. Fun engine, too, man. Real torquey again. It's one of those situations. Oh, funny story about that. So, when I had my 96 and my Z06, they were both parked in the garage at the same time. And I used to drive my 96 a lot. I mean, I would take it to the gym. I would just take it out just to go drive the thing. And I loved driving that car. Again, real torquey, real responsive. It was everything that my Z06 was not. My Z06 didn't even realize it was awake until about 4,000 RPM. Whereas my LT1 was basically coming into its own at about that RPM and was signing off at 5,000, 5,500. So nice and torquey, lots of fun, smooth. I used to love driving that car. I kind of wish I wouldn't have gotten rid of it. So anyway, that's where we're at with that. Levi's saying, thank you so much, man. Got all the parts, and before I tear into her this week, I want to do it right as well as to get to my goal. Thanks for the knowledge. Yeah, absolutely, man. Get out there and enjoy it. It's a lot of fun doing that stuff. Jurassic RT is saying, that t-shirt is legendary. Adds 12 horsepower. Yep. There you go, baby. America. Love it. Shawnee's saying, how well do you know Racer X, and did he have to replace the diff in his Charger? I've known Racer X for years. Probably 3-4 years. And yes, I believe he has just completed swapping that bad boy out. I'm not sure what he went with, though. I haven't talked to him. Ryan McKenzie checking in saying, "Sup, B, love the chats, man. Ryan, love having you around, buddy. Thank you." 510 Card Dog saying, "What up, B? Got the fist pump, got the arm flag," saying, "What a blast today was. Drove my 6.4 70 Duster an hour and a half to the track, ran down the track first time ever. What a blast, then drove an hour and a half back. Love it. Absolutely love to hear that you're out enjoying it, man. That's what these things are all about. Listen, make sure you're having fun with these things, guys. I know a lot of folks, they'll hit me up for, well, how does this mod work? How does that mod work? What does this do? What does that do? Listen, it doesn't matter what any of that stuff does. Just make sure that you know what, you're having fun. And as long as you're having fun, that's all that matters, is what these things are all about. And being able to share those experiences and those stories with your friends, doesn't get any better than that. So I love it, man. Glad you had a blast. Sounds like you had a blast. Sounds like a great day to me. So awesome, my man. Congrats. Josh was checking in saying, "Hey, B, what torque do you recommend for the lug nuts on the Hellcat 111 foot-pounds, my friend?" I run that on the stock wheels, and I run that on the race stars as well. Oh, and do that in, I typically do it in a minimum of 2 steps. Some guys like to do it in 3, but I'll do it in 2 steps normally. And I'll do 75 and then 111. Always in a star pattern. 500 Kurt Dog Sound, get some good tires next time. Maybe trailer it to the track too. 2.660 foot, ran a 12.7 at 114. Super fun. That is screaming for a 2.660 foot. Do you have any tires left after doing that? Shawnee's saying, "I'm considering trying to drop 200 lbs off the Hellcat rather than upgrading the boost. Maybe a drag race weight of around 4,000 pounds. Look, that's the way that I would go, man. Listen, again, you start getting real wrapped up, tied up with the pulleys and this and that. And by the way, you go double pulley, E85 isn't just in your future, it's part of your build list. It's mandatory. You can say about E50, all this other crap. No, you're using some kind of a mixed fuel. You're on E85 now. So, yeah, you can maybe get away with it on race gas or on pump gas, but it is going to be a, oh, hang on. Going for 5? Where'd he go? Oh, it's on the fluid on. Ah, shit. 5. There he is, little bastard. 5 of them sent to hell this evening. Anyway. Yeah, I would definitely go that route, though. I wouldn't necessarily start getting into the double pulley thing, mainly because to do it right and to really do it right, for your setup, you're going to be going with a 275 upper with the Innovators West lower, injectors, pump, everything else along the way to run the E85, which is what you're going to have to run. It's just not worth it. And some guys go, you just run Boostane. Yeah, do that and let me know how that works out for you long term. Here's a hint. It won't. Let's see. Catalyst 99's got a fun question. Why is the old school 440 considered to be a better street engine than the 426? Well, it all comes down to throttle response. And perfect example of this will be just what I was talking about, my old LT1 versus my LS6 that was in my Z06. The LT1 was stock. That's it, full stop. My LS6 had cam, slightly cleaned up heads, Veraram intake, long tube headers. You get the idea, but I was running the stock LS6 intake. The LT1 was always on. You tip into the throttle and you get this immediate wave of torque to push you back in the seat. And it was like that not only at wide open, but it was like that at partial throttle too. I mean, you tip into the throttle and it was an immediate push back in the seat. That's how the 440 cars were. The Hemi, not so much. In fact, the Hemi, even the street Hemi, well, I should have said even. We're talking about the street Hemi, not the race Hemi with, 12.5 to 1 compression. We're talking about the street Hemi with 10.5 to 1 compression, with a hydraulic flat tappet cam. The thing is that the heads flowed great, but they were real lazy, tumble port. That engine really didn't start to wake up until about 3,500 RPM. And at that point, it was only about 1,000 RPM away from the 440s. Well, the port velocity on the 440 at 4,700 RPM is the same as the Hemi at 6,200 RPM. That's not to say that they were flowing the same. In fact, they weren't. The 440 is basically a small block head on a big block, but that generates a lot of velocity. Whereas the Hemi is lazy until it gets to about, an RPM where the airflow and the actual cylinder fill starts to become efficient. Well, if you line the two up next to each other and you just drive the cars, the 426 feels lazy. The 440, you're rolling to the throttle, it lights the tires up, it does all this fun stuff. And if you put them on a drag strip, yeah, the 426 wins, but the 426 doesn't really put any gap on a 440 until after the 8th mile. All gearing aside, and I get all of that, but the point that I'm making here is that when you compare the two cars, the 440 simply, in for lack of a better way of putting it, or not to stretch this thing out too far, it's just a much more usable engine. Just from a daily standpoint. Not to mention, you could get air conditioning with it, but that's beside the point. The reality is that guys and gals were not going to spend the extra money to have an engine that you've got to wait for the power. And oh yeah, by the way, didn't have a warranty. Now, I think the original Hemis may have had a 12-month warranty, but I know that got reduced down to like 90 days. And you're talking about folks that are just not going to throw that kind of money at something that, if you're going to be racing it, you're probably going to blow it up. And it's a lot more expensive if you frag that thing than it is a 440. Anyway, I think you start to get the idea. The funny thing about the old Gen 2 Hemi is that, yeah, it was a pretty cool engine, but it came early. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. The Hemi, when it was brought, the street Hemi, I believe got its first love in the race Hemi was released in 64. I think the street Hemi was on the scene in 65 or 66. Either way, it was kind of early on, and it did a whole lot of really cool things early on, but it was never actually, there were some slight changes. There was like a slight camshaft change and a couple of other things, but the street Hemi from 60, let's call it 66, didn't change by enough to really matter. I'm sure there were some changes, but okay. So There wasn't enough of a change between that year and 72, or 71 rather, when the last Hemi was turned out into the world. Where the 454 and some other twisted wedge and canted valve engines that were actually kind of put out onto the scene to go after that engine, to go after the Hemi, I mean, those things were, you know, all over the place. And they consistently had updates, upgrades, used them in different platforms, and did all kinds of stuff with those engines. Used them in trucks, station wagons, pickup trucks, muscle cars. I mean, you name it. It just had a much more wide appeal, and they did more with the platform. Whereas the Hemi was just known as this race engine. And it never had an opportunity to just be an engine. It was always just the same thing, is what I was trying to get at. So, again, there's areas where that engine just did not do well, and, you know, that kind of spelled the demise. Not to mention, you know, that fuel economy and things like that start to come into play too. So that's the reason why. Smoking a 5 saying a 6.4 and an old Mopar, man, that would be a fun car to drive. I like it. Yeah, absolutely. It'd be a whole lot of fun. A lot of guys are starting to do that too. Multiple Mopars checking in saying, love the supercharged big block 440 and Arcuda, instant throttle response, and ignorant on the stock size tires. Absolutely. And that's another thing. I mean, when you've got heads like the 440 has, boost response is instant, especially on something with that much displacement. So, yeah, I can imagine that thing is going to be a riot. Kevin is asking, oh, y'all go out and check out Mopar's channel too. He's got some cool stuff. He's the supplier of the red-eye drive shaft that Little Miss Revlon is currently spinning. Let's see. Kevin saying, what rear end did you have in your LT1? 253 is what was in the back of that thing. He said, I have the 273, and it's probably going to be one of my must-have mods to upgrade to the 373. And it's a 4-speed auto, so the 273 are hot garbage. Yeah, I had the 253 in mine. I had the Barbie edition bet. And, yeah, little bit slow out of the hole. She's still kind of light the tires up, but yeah, I was actually going to go with 323s for mine. Now, mainly because of the short tire size. In fact, I've got 373s in Foxy, and that rear end is probably going to be switched to like a 323. Mainly because, again, with that intake, it's making so much torque down low. It's just, you know, 373, I can't really take advantage of it with RPM. Anyway, sorry, I digress. The reason why not the 373 in this one though, and really if you've got a tire size around 26 inches, it can just get a little bit buzzy on the highway. Mopar saying, got you another drive shaft out of the 2020 narrow red eye. If you need it, we are swapping it tomorrow. Yes, I do, as a matter of fact. I will be calling you tomorrow. Keep your phone handy, brother. But yes, and I'll give you a shout mañana, brother. Thank you, sir. I like it. We need to get some of these drag radials on the back of that thing. Hey, so getting back to the tires, the main thing I wanted to do for you guys is just kind of get y'all some data, get y'all some driving impressions, get y'all some information. One of the biggest headaches that a lot of guys have been having lately is really trying to find the right tire for street use, for Hellcats and things like that. Because traditionally the biggest issue with drag radials is that they didn't do well in the wet. Well, at least they didn't do well in the wet after having them for a while. You start to wear them down. You know, they don't have very deep channels in them, and they just don't pump water well. So I can tell you that, again, wrapping this thing up with the tire thing, because I think we've kind of worked this about as far as we can. They do run wide, so be on the lookout for that. I would recommend them, but only with an 11-inch wide wheel. If you're going to run them on a 10.5, that's perfectly fine. Just know that they're going to bulge slightly where the older 305s won't. But from a performance standpoint, guys, honestly, I forget that they're back there. And if aesthetics don't mean anything to you, these are going to be the tires for you. I think they're going to wear really well. And I also think that, well, because you can just forget that they're back there, they make the car feel, and the confidence of it, the car's just safer with those on the back of it. Also, I can talk about the stability of these things at high speeds. When testing in Mexico, at speeds well over double the posted speed limit anywhere, they're just fine. They're dead stable, no issues, nothing weird. So, I mean, props to them. Again, performance rated as a 10. Aesthetics, it's a 5. So take that for what it's worth. CFL James checking out with the arm flex. I like it. So there's that on those tires. And again, man, I'm sorry I couldn't get you guys some video on it. It was just one of those things where, you know, the first pass, I mean, it's kind of funny. I launched the car and the camera, and the whole rig that I've got mounted to the windshield just comes whooshing back this way. It's funny, but, you know, it's not, because I wanted to get data. Well, Mopar saying drag radials can be suicide if you hit a puddle, for sure. You know, I tell you what, that is, and here's the thing. These tires, I like them a lot because I've driven them in the wet, and they act just like a normal tire. But yeah, the older tires, so I had Tri-5 Rs on the Z06. The latest one that I had that wasn't the Hellcat was running the Tri-5R. And true to form, I got stuck in some rain coming back from Galveston one day, and that thing was sketchy as hell. And I mean, just barely any kind of throttle input would get that car to just kind of start stepping out. It was really kind of spooky. So the design of the new tire, well, it's such that it performs great in wet weather. In fact, again, go back and watch that video. I'm actually passing people on the highway with those tires. And it's funny that nobody even ever brought it up. It still kind of blows my mind. But I'm in the left-hand lane, and you can see that it had recently rained, and I'm passing people, you know. So that's how much confidence I had in those tires. Let's see. Smoking Up Vibe saying, have you seen the Indy modular intake manifold for the Gen 3 Hemi? Top plate can be single 4-barrel, dual 4-barrel, or 6-pack setup. I'm thinking about a 345 6-pack setup for my dad's 38 coupe. Yeah. So here's the thing. That intake looks good, but from a performance standpoint, it's not awesome if it's the one that I'm thinking of. Kind of a hybrid modified style short runner single plane, if I'm not mistaken. There's a couple of them floating around out there like that. I know that the Mopar carbureted intake for the Gen 3 is, I mean, it's there to allow for a swap, but it doesn't perform very well at all. I think that's just kind of where you're at with it. None of them do as well as the 6.1 intake, or obviously the 6.4 intake. None of them are quite that good. Obviously the Holly and the Edelbrock are both pretty good too, but you know, it just depends on what the goal is for that car. You won't really need a lot of torque for a 38 Dodge Coupe, but I think that you would probably, I think you'll be fine with it. I think you'll find that it makes plenty of power, and it does. It'll make plenty of power, and it'll look the part, if nothing else. Mike's asking, could you drop or slam a Challenger on the 315 drag radials, or too big of a tire? So I would go so far, yeah, you can. You absolutely can. Because if you can with the 305 35s that are like the new G2, or in this case Tri-5 R2, which is basically a 315 width. Yes, you can. Just make sure you get the car aligned. I would also say that it will probably need to be, you're going to probably need to do some fender well work, because when you drop the car, when you bring the tires in, you're going to have to kick them out just slightly and bring the bottoms in just to keep them, you know, a good contact patch. So yeah, it may rub a little bit more, so I'd probably say go ahead and start massaging now before you do any work to it. Catalyst99 is asking, are there any all-season tires that can also function as good drag radials? No, there's not, because all-season implies cold weather, and drag radials are not allowed extended periods of time below 32 to, well, really 27 to 32 degrees, depending on the manufacturer. That's your breakover. The compound just does not do well with low temperatures. So all season depends on the winter that you live in, or you know how cold it gets in the winter where you live. But realistically, to answer the question, no. In fact, there's not a tire out there that would do well traction-wise that you would want to even remotely consider for winter duty if you're not living in, you know, Florida, South Texas, or something like that. Let's see. Oh, Smoking a 5 saying, yeah, Dad just drives his coupe to car shows. As long as it looks good and sounds good with a lumpy can, man, that's all you need, brother. Shoot, I mean, if you can get away with it, you know, throw a tri-power on that thing. Yeah, it'll look good. Be a pain in the ass to tune. Well, it's not that bad. If you've never tuned a tri-power, it can be a little bit annoying, but it'll perform way better with a single 4-barrel. I can promise you that. Let's see. Oh, so by the way, I was talking about getting new wheels for Revlon. Looks like they should be in Thursday. So I'm hoping to have those things mounted before Mopar Fest. I'll probably will show up at Mopar Fest, but unfortunately, because I don't have any tires, I won't be able to compete or do anything, which is a bummer. So I may just go and hang out. Kevin's asking, hey Mason, how much quicker in the real world is the 8-speed over the 5-speed? Because I have yet to have a stock 8-speed car pull away from me convincingly with my 306 limited slip stock Challenger. On the street, not a lot, man. I mean, where you really start to notice the difference is in traction heavy conditions. In other words, at the drag strip. Or if you're both on a drag radial on the street, and I mean more like ET Street R type of drag radial, that's where you'll see the 8-speed really start to show the difference. Mainly because first gear is so aggressive. And to be honest with you, let me rewind that a little bit. First of all, a lot of guys have a hard time launching 8-speed cars. 5-speed cars are simply a lot easier because the torque multiplication isn't quite as significant. The 8-speeds have a nasty habit of lighting the tires up, and so a lot of times guys will kind of feather into the throttle from a dig. From a roll, there's really not much of a difference because, you know, ratios being what they are, and where one falls into one gear, another one may find that they're falling into a doldrum at that gear. In other words, what that means is, you know, driving an automatic, you'll have those mile per hours where you drop the hammer on it and it's just a sweet spot. 8-speeds will typically have more of those because, well, it's 8 speeds. The fewer the gears, you know, you get the fewer those sweet spots will be. But they're going to happen at different mile an hours. And so, you know, yours at 30 miles an hour might be, I mean, that might be your spot, or 40 miles an hour might be your spot, whereas the 8-speed, that might be a bit of a doldrum. So it's kind of hard to compare transmission to transmission if you're doing roll racing because of that factor. But man, to be honest, I've driven all of them. I like all of them. In fact, the first Mopar, the first Challenger that I drove was I want to say it was a 2000, what the hell was it? I think it was a 2012 or 11. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Signature Series, 5.7 car. And it was the Nag 1 that made me really start looking at transmission tuning a little bit differently. I had my Lightning then, and I went and test drove that Signature Series car just because I thought it was pretty. It was red, white with the red stripes, and it was a 20-inch wheel car, so it had 309 gear in it, I believe. And anyway, it didn't matter. I fell in love with the way that transmission shifted. And when I got my truck, my 2014 Ram, it was the second year, whatever it was, for the 8-speed automatic. And even then I noticed, man, this 8-speed feels a lot like that first car that I drove with that automatic transmission. In other words, I loved the transmission tuning with that 5-speed. So there's nothing wrong with the 5-speed. In fact, some of the cool things about the 5-speed is that they act a lot like, they're just a bit more traditional when you start modding the car, gearing and things like that. Especially if you decide to throw a 370 gear at that thing. That's when that car will wake up. And not saying that it's going to do you a whole lot of favors on the street. Start to have the same problem that the 392 guys do, especially if you're hitting it from a dig. But again, I like them both. I guess that's my problem. I really do like both of them. So yeah, there's some areas where the 8-speed is certainly going to have an advantage. A lot of that is going to be only under, you would have to be sitting in the driver's seat of both cars. In other words, drive one with a Nag 1, drive one with the 8-speed, and roll into the throttle at about half throttle. That's where you're going to notice the big difference between the 8-speed and the 5-speed. The 8-speed is just going to be more responsive. You're going to be into the throttle. It's going to go da, da, da. It's going to start going through the gears. And you're just going to notice that at lighter throttle inputs, the car just responds more eagerly than it did with the Nag 1. But all you got to do is just give the Nag 1 a little bit more of that right foot, and it starts to act just fine. And it's funny, too, because I was actually thinking about this exact thing the other day. I was in my car, I was in Revlon, and I was thinking about different cars that I had driven that I kind of wish I had more experience with. And one of those cars is the SRT 8 300C. I love those cars. The only problem is I just didn't ever really have a lot of time with any of them. And one of those cars that I really was kind of bummed out, this is one of those situations where this car, I was having so many weird, there was a funky electrical issue that I was trying to diagnose, and I ended up not being able to diagnose it. I had to call in one of the techs to, we couldn't find it anywhere. We couldn't find, and the problem was the car would just shut off. It's like, what? Out of nowhere. And I could drive the thing. Data logs looked good. Everything looked great. Everything looked fantastic. No issues, no nothing. And it would just croak. It wasn't ignition. It wasn't, anyway, long story short, it ended up being a funky issue with the crankshaft position sensor. Something like, I think it was crankshaft position sensor. Anyway, but it was one of those situations where I didn't get a lot of chance to really play with that car too much, but I do remember driving it. I remember thinking, man, I really like this car. It wasn't because it was fast. It wasn't, not by comparison anyway, but it was fast enough, and it sounded good, and it had great response. So yeah, I see where you're coming with that, where the 8-speed doesn't just, just run off and, leave your life, but the big difference with the 8-speed is not necessarily at wide open throttle, it's everywhere else that it does so much better. just underfoot, so to speak. Smoke It Up 5 saying, I've tuned a dual 4-barrel tunnel ram, but not a tri-power. Not the tri-power. Yeah. I've attempted to tune a tri-power under the tutelage of somebody else. I kind of got it good. I mean, it worked fine, but yeah, get your all your flow meters and, you know, checking everything. It's just and then of course you're gonna have progressive linkage, and you'll be running off of typically the center carburetor, and then the other two will act more or less as secondaries. So you got progressive linkage going on with that. It'll be a lot of fun. Mike Orr is saying, so if I got drag radials, you're saying I wouldn't be able to drive them in the winter? Possibly not. Again, it depends on where you're living. What I have to get a different set gets into single digit and negative degrees sometimes here in North Texas. Oh, you're up north? What, up in, where, like Lubbock or something? I would say, yeah, I wouldn't run those in the wintertime. I mean, you might be able to get away with the Nittos, but you will not be able to get away with that with the Mickey Thompson ET Street SS's. I mean, it says it right there. In fact, if you go on their website, I think, I may be wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, it'll say something to the effect of not for use in weather below 27 degrees. I would check into that, but I know it's basically don't run it below freezing. And what happens is, it's not that the tire won't work. What happens is, if a long-term exposure to those temperatures will make it start to crack. So, yeah, that's a problem. Well, Mopar is asking, what size tires do you need? 305, 45, 17. That's the ET Street radial that I'm the most comfortable with. And unfortunately, there's a production date on those tires. Apparently, the initial production date was October 2nd or something like that. That may have been moved to November. And when I talked to Mickey Thompson on Friday yesterday, he was saying that it might actually go into December, which I don't know that it would actually go into December. But yeah, 305, 45, 17. That's what I'm hunting right now, brother. At least that's what I've got ordered. Any inside track would be greatly appreciated. Chuck Rice checking in saying, hello Mopar brothers, holla from Vermont. I like it. Chuck Rice saying, what would be the best shifting sweet spot on my RT Plus Shaker 6-speed manual trans to get the quickest quarter mile? RT Plus, I would say 5,800 RPM. Catalyst 99 is asking, is the Charger Hellcat slightly faster than the Challenger because of aerodynamics in the quarter mile? Actually, the Challenger is quicker than the Charger in the quarter mile due to weight, but top speed is a different story. The Charger is a little bit more slippery, and that's why you'll see a top speed of anywhere from 199 to 200 on the Challenger to like 201, 203 for the Charger, and that's why. TU's checking in, saying, AOB, are there any stock A8 transmission Hellcats that have gotten into the high 8s in the quarter without needing to be built? Yeah, Brian Sanders' car. In fact, I don't think that his was built going into it. You got to define built. Okay, so no clutches or anything like that. So like stock clutches, stuff like that. I know Z's got a different valve body and a different torque converter. But the rest of that trans is pretty much stock. Sanders' car is basically the same way. I think his converted, but I mean, he was in the 8s with that transmission when it was bone stock. So yeah, Sanders did it. I just sit there and think about that for a minute. It's been a while back. It's been about a year and a half-ish ago. But yeah, no, I don't think his had anything done to it, as a matter of fact, at that point. Let's see. Cal saying, if you live in Minnesota, no. Oh, talking about the quarter mile maybe on that one. Hilton Mode saying, B, did you see that Challenger with the all-terrain tires? Yeah, I saw it. I think that was a V6 car or something like that. Turned out that wasn't the greatest of builds. TU saying, yes, stock clutches unopened. Again, man, so when Brian was stock, not me, Brian, when the other Brian was stock displacement, stock blower on the spray, double pulleyed. In that setup, that car went 888 was the number. May have been an 898. But I am, brother, don't give me the line, but I am like 90% positive that's where that car went. Also, to that point, I know that there have been some demons get away with it. With their stock transmission, but man, you know what? Maybe not with the stock transmission on the demon side. I think that there might be one or two that got into the high eights with that setup as well. But yes, I would say it's been done. Although I don't recommend it because it is on its way out. I know that those guys that have gotten away with it, it's tough to do because at that power level and at that weight, you're really starting to play with a lot of different settings in that transmission to hold it together for those runs. And really, you start looking at 860, 870-ish mile an hour. That's going to put you at about 154, 156 with these cars. That's tough. That's real tough to do, especially when you consider that ET of like say 867, 877 is known for 160 mile an hour trap speeds. These cars are doing it all in the first half of the track. So they're getting it done, and then they're kind of fading towards the end where other cars have to really make up that speed on the tail end. And what I'm getting at it is that transmission is having to soak up a ton of acceleration, a ton of inertia. So it's really hard to get them to last for very long. Boost is checking in saying, heck yeah, I love the lies, B. Mason. Thank you very much. Got the arm flex. I like it. CFL is checking in saying, I've been waiting for a set of MT305 4517 since May after 3 defective sets. Damn. I'm using the wobbly set on the car now. It's a real horrible experience. Worse than recaps. Damn. Hate to hear that. Cattle Sound Eyes asking, I see a lot of folks like the Mickey Thompson ET Streets. Talking about the ET Street R's. Is it just a marketing thing? Or are those any better than the Nitto? They do hook better than the Nitto. In fact, they are significantly better than the Nittos for consistency, launch. They wear like iron. They're really good tires all the way around. So there's that to consider. They're really not a street tire. I mean, they're good enough in fair weather. You know, no clouds in the sky. You're good. They'll get you to the track and back, no problem. But I would not run those things on the street for any real length of time, other than, maybe, an hour and a half in maybe 2 hours worth of a drive in either direction. At the most, 2 hours if you had to. Hour and a half at the most, just driving it. For like an extended period of time. If you're only driving for like, 30 minutes and you stop, 30 minutes and you stop, cumulative, not a big deal. But they're soft, which means they're going to run hot, which means that street driving is going to tear them up pretty quick. Carl's checking in saying, yo, B, I got a 2019 Scat Pack Challenger manual. I got the Barton in it. I like it. Can the transmission handle Hellcat power numbers? Technically, yeah, probably. We had built a few 6-speed cars that were almost Hellcat, and I mean those transmissions held up just fine. The 6060 will actually handle a lot more power than a lot of folks give it credit for. You know, just do the clutch line mod where you pull the restrictor out. But yeah, no, they'll. I mean, for how long? There's a lot of things that go into how long will a manual transmission last. But you know, 550, 570 to the rear wheels, which is right on top of Hellcat, stock Hellcat numbers, and they never have any complaints from them. Let's see. Alan's checking in and saying, hey man, got a question for you. The other day I was merging onto the highway and let my 392 Challenger rip and was under full load. The ass end was squirming side to side, almost made me lose control. Never broke traction, it just felt like the rear end was loose. I wheel hopped the car pretty bad a couple of days ago and was thinking something may have broken. The rear tires are heavily worn pilots. So here's the thing on that. Chances are what you're doing is you're just hazing the tires. Depending on the surface you were running on, I've had mine haze on a downshift with Shalandra before on a set of really well-worn tires. Now, as far as wheel hop is concerned, I doubt you broke anything. It certainly wouldn't hurt to, you know, get the thing up on ramps and have a look, but I highly doubt you stung it. Chances are, again, it was just haze on the tires. You know, could have been some dust or debris or whatever on the street. Anything is fair game on the street. So give it a good once over and just check everything out. Make sure that, you know, you didn't somehow or another bend a trailing arm or something like that, which I doubt very seriously. You know, check your tire pressures. You've got a real worn set of tires back there. Probably the reason why she was acting a little bit silly. Let's see. Arthur checking in saying, Brother B. Mason got the arm flex and the shades. I like it, saying, how are you tonight? Soaking up the info as always. Man, I'm doing good, brother. I hope you're doing the same. Let's see. Oh, Alan's checking in saying, don't know if the tires or something else I might have broken. Nah, probably just the tire setup on that. I mean, look, I've had mine on a very worn set of ET Street SS's. This is Shalandra. And I had it actually haze a little bit at the big end of the drag strip. In fact, it was on the 3-4 shift. And I think that it did it mainly because there was a little bit of dew on the track. A real worn set of drag radials will sometimes act a little silly. But again, you're running not the same type of tire, but the same type of a situation, same load, kind of, you know, higher speed situations. Let's see. Chuck's checking in saying, my owner's manual states semi-synthetic 5W20 for my RT Challenger. Can I use full synthetic? Yes, you can. My local mechanic said yes, but wanted a second opinion. No, absolutely you can. Modern cars, you know, there's no issue or reason why you can't run full synthetic. In fact, I would probably recommend that. Semi-synthetic is okay though. Just know that coming into this. If you're changing your oil every 4,000 miles, 5,000 miles, that's fine for a semi-synthetic oil. You're not really up against any type of load issue. You're not, overheating oil with a turbo or anything like that. So yeah, you should be fine there. In fact, you would be fine there. And then there's no scenario really where you can't run full synthetic. There was some. So back in the day, and you got to remember that synthetic oil has been around since forever. I mean, it's been around since the 70s or early 80s, something like that. But the difference was the type of oil that was used and the different things that were in that particular type of oil back then. And so back then, there were some things that would be a problem for seals and stuff like that. If you're going from a conventional oil to a synthetic, those formulations don't even exist today. I mean, that's just something that's in the books. And anyway, the esters that they use, whatever. Anyway, long story short, No, you'll be fine with that. The only one I would think of to stay away from, just don't run the high mileage full synthetic. There's some stuff in high mileage oils that's designed to swell in seals, or any seals for that matter, depending on the type of material that seal is made from. That's really there to kind of put a band-aid on, I don't know, valve seal leaks or whatever, I don't know. Anyway, there's some stuff that can kind of pop up with the high mileage. It's not going to hurt seals in general. It's just there's other components in there that aren't lubricants. It's just additives and things like that. The ad pack is a little bit more aggressive with those things. You might not even need it. So just go ahead, keep running the oil that you're running. You'll be just fine for a long time. Just make sure you check. Look, the biggest thing about oil is just make sure you're changing the stuff. I mean, I am one of the worst, or best, depending on how you want to look at it, about oil changes. In fact, Revlon's due for an oil change tomorrow. I mean, I am like 3 months, 4 months, and they're getting an oil change. If it even just sits there, it's going to get an oil change. So, yeah, I'm bad about that. Or great about that. Let's see. Jamie's asking, what is the safe limit for torque to the wheels on the HP70? From what I've seen, in my opinion, I would say somewhere around the 530 to 550 foot-pounds of torque on a Mustang dyno, on an eddy current loaded dyno, somewhere in that 530 to 550 foot-pounds of torque. Now, that being said, the big caveat to that is, are you running stock-ish tires? In other words, are you running something like, your all seasons or a summer tire, something like that, something with a tread wear of about 200 or higher, which is most regular street tires. If that's the case, then, and you're not taking the car to the drag strip, you're just playing with it, goofing off, whatever, then more than likely the transmission is going to last for a good long while. The tires are going to break loose far before you're going to start having transmission slip, typically. Here's the caveat to that, though. I mean, you've got hard downshifts, third gear, fourth gear, where it's still overcoming a lot of inertia and you're getting that high torque load in those gears. You may still run into a bit of an issue with it there. I know that on the dyno, I'm not going to say it's like clockwork, but it was pretty predictable. If the car was making really good power, that 550 number was pretty much like you would almost expect it to slip a little bit at that point. Now, I mean, is that going to hurt anything? Well, it's not really supposed to slip. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what you want to try to avoid. So just know that coming into it. I mean, it depends on what you're trying to get away with, too. If you're trying to get away with big power on an HP70, for you old school guys out there, that'd be equivalent of trying to get a lot of power out of a turbo 350 or a C4 transmission. You know that there's some limitations there, but there's some workarounds. And you can still build up an HP70, but now that there's adapters and kits that are out there that allow you to run an HP90, it kind of begs the question as to why you would even want to go that route. But, yeah, I would say stick to the recipe on this. If you're looking at building power, just, Hellcat power out of a 392, that's fine, but the transmission now is going to be it's going to be your weak link, and just don't run real sticky tires and you probably will be okay. For a little bit. Calson and I saying, do you get any hot dogs that challenge you to street race at traffic lights? Every once in a while. Every once in a while. And, every once in a while, I act like an idiot. So yes and yes. Chuck Rice saying, Pennzoil Gold, you'll be in good shape. Don't worry about it. Oh, Mile High is checking in saying CV boots are failing on my lower Challenger. Any half shafts available with a more pliable boot? Oh, good question. I'm not so sure about that. I think the G-Force, well, G-Force has got an awesome set. Those are like lifetime warranties on those things. That would probably do well with that, but look for other reasons why the boot would be acting like that. Make sure you're not getting any interference things. If you've got different exhaust, make sure the exhaust isn't somehow coming into contact. I know that I ran into this problem with one Charger with an aftermarket exhaust where the position, I want to say the position of the right-hand side butterfly actuator was coming into contact with the boot under certain circumstances. So check around, because typically you don't really see that too often. Especially, I mean, you got cars that are launching hard, lots of suspension articulation, a lot of things that are going on there. And there's a lot of lowered cars that aren't having problems. So look there to see if you're running into any problems with like something that could be touching it or interfering with it. Because I just don't know, and I've seen a lot of lowered cars. I just haven't seen a lot of those half shafts fail or the boots failing unless there was something else coming into contact with it. And with that, guys, I am going to wrap it up. We are coming up on almost 2 hours. So I'm going to bail on this. In fact, I'm going to start getting back on Little Miss Revlon. I got to clean her up, get all the rest of the track funk off of her, because we went out and had a little bit of fun, and now I got her back from giving her a bath. I got to kind of spa date her up a little bit. But at any rate, I want to thank all y'all for hanging out with me. Hopefully the info on the tires has helped you in some way. Let me know if you decide to get a set of these things. Keep me posted. Let me know how let me know how they're working for you. What are your thoughts on them? Are they working out for you? Do you share my opinions? Do you think I'm a lunatic and I'm thinking about this the wrong way? Either way, if you decide to get a set, let me know. I think you're going to like them from a performance standpoint. Like I say, they're awesome. But that's going to be a wrap on this one. Y'all take it easy. Have a great one. Stay safe out there. Wear your mask, not for yourself. Do it for others. Love each and every one of y'all, and we will catch y'all on the next one. God bless. Adios.